as a background check in order to be a volunteer. Some districts check the New Mexico courts and look for cases or charges that have been filed against somebody in New Mexico in regard to that background check, and then they look at the sex offender registry. And so as we go forward and we're looking at that policy, I'd like the board to think about, do you want to continue with fingerprints and a background check, or do you want to consider an alternative method of looking at a criminal history? If you'd like to continue with the fingerprint background check, we can identify funds to cover that. To someone's point that had about the Title I application, I think Mr. Wagner and Mr. Hunt's as well, we already have identified funds in the Title I application for parent engagement. And initially we had talked about bringing in for some training and make and take kinds of things, but we could amend that and have it be to cover for background checks. Or we could identify another line item. It's not $40, I think it's currently $44. In my previous district, I had written a grant through the Department of Public Safety about fingerprinting, and we received training and a device in order to do fingerprinting ourselves. And it's a digital fingerprint scan. It's a small machine. My staff were trained to do that, and we did it in central office. So there wasn't sending them to anywhere else. We did them in-house ourselves. Now you still have to pay the $44 because the fee goes to the Department of Public Safety. It's not for the district, it's not for a license, it goes to the Department of Public Safety. I've looked and I haven't seen that grant. The grant pays for the device, it pays for the training, it also pays for an encrypted phone line. The fingerprints, as you can guess, are highly confidential, and they're sent through an encrypted phone line. And if that's something that the district would like me to pursue, I can continue to pursue that, to do fingerprinting. It wouldn't be just for volunteers. Every new employee that we hire has to have a fingerprint background check. And they actually, we pay for one and they pay for one for their license and one for employment. And we have to send them elsewhere. If we were a one-stop shop, we could do that ourselves. When we have contractors that work in the district, TLC for example, we have to have evidence of a background check. And Marla would spend time registering them, and TLC would pay for their background check. And again, we'd have to send them elsewhere. So my question is whether or not you'd like me to continue to pursue that grant, and we could train, a couple of people here in central office to do that fingerprint scan. You just have to be certified, and then we could do them here as a one-stop shop kind of thing. And as we think about our volunteers, looking at either a Title I adjustment with that portion of the budget that we've already set aside for parent engagement, instead of doing it for training or for materials for training, whether or not we could set some of that aside for the background checks, or if you'd like us to look at a different line item. Every school has materials and supplies accounts, and every year we roll money out of that materials account that we don't utilize all of it. We could set a portion of that aside and put it just in a line item like we do currently for our employees that we hire. It's something for you to consider. In regard to the statute requires that there is training, that there is paperwork that is put in place for volunteers that includes a code of ethics that they sign, a job description that they sign, and it's very purposeful and intentional. In this district, we have not done that. We should, but we have not. And so I have draft of a handbook, and it doesn't look like, let me go back to my email because I was actually updating this over the weekend. But if it's something that the board is interested in, I already have a draft of a handbook that I had put together previously that meets all of the requirements of the statute, and it's something that volunteer stuff, that's my official title for it. But I have the training and I have a handbook that I could bring to the board in August so that we are prepared and ready to go with our volunteer program, including the training. But I didn't want to get ahead of the board on this, and I was hoping as we were reviewing the policies tonight that we would have the chance to get to the volunteer portion of it. And I'm not going to review the whole handbook tonight, but in the handbook there's a welcome letter and it talks about our mission statement, but it gives us the goals, it gives us the job description and the pledge. It does all the things that meet the statute. I'd like to run it by the advisory council, but I didn't want to get ahead of the board without us having talked about the volunteer policy that we currently have in place. You'll have had it for a little bit, but it doesn't meet the current guidelines. So I'd like to bring that to review in August, along with the handbook and the training and all of that for your consideration. If you think that you'd be able to do that on the August agenda.
Sure. We've always welcomed volunteers. I don't know where everybody's coming from that this district and this board's never welcomed volunteers. Half the time we can't get people to show up for nothing. But if it's the money issue or if it's tutoring, we welcome them. But to cover the district, you have to do a background check. Do you want a child molester tutoring your kids? I definitely do not. I promise you. Well, without a background check, we don't know who's who.
I think it would be a good use of the Title I funding that you guys have already applied for, to use it to pay for the background checks, so you have the parents that are willing to be involved.
And that way they don't have to incur that out-of-pocket expense.
Right.
Like, you shouldn't have to pay a volunteer. I agree.
So, there's some deals we can put in place, most definitely. If we can make it easier, I'm for that. I'd rather pull a wagon with the round wheel rather than a square wheel. It's easier, I promise you. But, you know, but we still gotta be cohesive about the protection of our students. Because we're responsible for these students in this district.
What I hear you say,
volunteers have got to go through some kind of process that we, as a district board, and you as a superintendent, Dr. Sims, feel safe that whatever volunteers, because there's a lot of ill-minded volunteers out there that have jumped on the chance to volunteer, to get their foot in the door.
What I hear
you
you saying
have protection.
Is you're more comfortable with the fingerprint background check than checking New Mexico courts and checking the sex offender registry. I've always done the fingerprint checks, but I just wanted to put it out there as an option that some districts don't. But it's your policy. I will tell you, there are things that show up on the background check that you won't find on the registry or on the New Mexico court system. It'll show up because the background check runs through the FBI as well as the state. It's a national background check.
I'd rather have a more secure background check. That way, if you decided later on in the year that, oh, okay, I want to go and they need an overnight sponsor for something, everything would already be in place. Sorry.
No problem. So to me, I'm going to echo what these two people have said. I don't think we can hear the impassioned plea for safety that's coming and then say, let's not worry about a background check. So I am all for a background check and the fingerprinting. If we want to write a grant and see if we can do it in-house to make it easier, that's fine. As somebody who has paid for my own and my wife paid for her own, I understand the frustration. I do think it shows a willingness, if you want my real opinion, to actually show up. Because I can tell you, and I think Kelsey can probably attest to this as well, to Randall's point, saying you're going to volunteer is one thing, but when people don't show, it is a frustration. And so I will tell you, I'm fine with making it easier to, in whatever capacity that is, whether that's using Title I funds, running a grant, whatever. I absolutely want to see volunteers, but we cannot listen to Shorty and other people make impassioned pleas for safety and lessen our safety. There's no earthly reason to do so.
I will tell you that even the background checks that we have run on some of our contractors, it's surprising the things that come up. And even though part of the handbook has the candidate complete what's called a criminal history affidavit, where they answer a bunch of scary yes and no questions, sadly, sometimes people are not honest on those things. And so I don't think you can, I think if we're going to err, we err on the extreme side of safety as opposed to cutting a corner. But I wouldn't be being transparent if I didn't let you know that you have options. It's not a mandate. I'm more comfortable with more rigorous, but sometimes I'm a little black and white. So if the board is willing to go that route, I can do that, and I can continue to look at options so that we don't have to send people to go somewhere else to drive.
I don't mind sending, just because that gives like the one hoop that they have to jump through to say, okay, I'm willing to drive here, get it, and get back. I understand it's a financial burden to have to drive, but we've seen people, oh yeah, I'll be there. But if they're not gonna take the time to drive and get the fingerprints that are already being paid for, to make that little investment, are they really gonna show up?
Well,
You can have the parents pay and then reimburse them if they show up.
I will say that having a little skin in the game helps. We spend a lot of money in another place where I've worked paying for things and then having no return on that. And it's disappointing because then we have a fixed budget. We advertise it when we have our open house or meet your teacher night. Parents sign up, and then those that want to fill out the paperwork, as soon as all the paperwork's complete, then we would send them for the background check, and then they would not show up at a classroom. And in the meantime, we've depleted the pool of money for the background check by people that didn't follow through. So that's a good point, Ms. Collins, about having some skin in the game for it. So I'll make a note of that and I'll bring something to the August board meeting. We're going to be in that section of the handbook or the policies in the 600 series. But there's more to it, and that's why I wanted you to have the statute, because as we're rewriting those policies, I want to make sure that we address all of the things that are in the statute, which is basically rewriting that policy. Would you like to rewrite that policy, or do you want me to bring you a draft of a policy from the policy advisory group, like I've done with other ones that already has it all stipulated?
Do we have access to it currently, since I couldn't access the 600 policies today?
You know, Josh is making a note of some of the things that are accessible, not accessible, so he can make sure that's.
If not, I'd like that printed copy.
Okay. Mr. Casanos?
Ma'am, just for consideration on that, on those fingerprints, I know it is burdensome for some of the families and they don't want to have to pay it out, but when my private agency was still open, I did require skin in the game once they paid for the background check. After they were on for a period of time, completed X number of hours, I reimbursed them back.
So we can procedurally make a determination, the same as Mrs. Hunt said about, you know, whether they invested it up front and then we give a reimbursement. I just wouldn't want to discourage somebody that times.
acts as a little bit of a filter. Nobody's gonna pay money if they know something's on their background.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not true.
No one will put $44 out if they know they have questionable background and it acts as a pre-filter.
So that was what I had hoped to get to during a policy review at the work session. There's quite a bit that's to it. I feel like I have a fully vetted process. I'd like to run it by the advisory committees to make sure that it's language they know and understand. A lot of it's governed by that statute. Also have a training module. You can see in my volunteer stuff that I worked on that I have. We have the statute, we have the training, we have PowerPoint slides. It's already put together. There's some components of the training that are required. So it'd be easy to gear it up. It's not like we have to recreate the wheel, but I need to bring it to you all first before we implement that. But I didn't want to get ahead of you in doing it without us having reviewed that policy first. So we'll review the policy at the next work session, and I'll be bringing at the same time the pieces for the handbook and the training that are in alignment with the statute, because it will be more than a technical review of the statute, of the policy. It will take 2 readings. So we would be adopting the handbook that's aligned with the statute before we actually adopt the policy itself. And I wanted to make you aware of that. And you'll see next month that the handbook is lined up with the statute regardless of the policy. And I just wanted, because we'll be reviewing all the handbooks next time. Because we're going to substantially change that policy, it will take 2 readings as opposed to 1. But I hope you'll be okay that I didn't get ahead of you, and we can review what we need to do to get compliant with that so that we can start up our volunteer program at the beginning of the school year and not have to wait till September, October till we get the policy done. Okay. Thank you for entertaining me on that. I was hoping to address that in our work session, but I wanted, since we did it, I wanted to get it on the end of my board report. So I think that's all I have for my report, sir. If you have any questions about what we're doing at the beginning of the year, you see a calendar there that talks about the trainings that'll be going on and things like that. Those drills that we'll be having are confidential, so I'm not publishing those, just so we can have practice drills with our kiddos.
Athletic coordinator.
Ready for the athletic report. Mr. Burnett has exciting things to show you tonight.
Okay.
So the big thing is, we got our summer programs going. We sent 36 girls to Adams State yesterday, middle schoolers and high schoolers, so that was kind of big, because this is the first remotely normal summer we've had in 3 years, so this is all very new to a lot of these kids, and I realized that, working with the boys over the course of the summer, that they're asking me questions of why are we doing this, why are we doing this, and stuff we've always done, but they've never done it. We've got a ton of facility work going on this summer, and I want to give you an update on all that and kind of show you what's going on. This part here, I've got 2 kids that are working under me through the Torrance County internship program, and they've just been doing a lot of facility stuff, and actually they repainted, that's just an example of one of the projects they've completed here on campus. They've repainted our whole locker room, got that, made some repairs and some stuff on it, got it back to where it needs to be. This is the new, picture of the aux floor has been repaired since the flooding in February. So the actual floor is brand new, and the tile going around has been completely replaced as part of that claim. And then there's another picture of that's just the floor itself.
It is shiny, shiny.
Yeah, it is in the best shape since I got here 10 years ago by far.
This is at the Ox Gym at the high school.
Ox Gym at the high
So
school.
not the main gym, but the practice gym.
it had flooded in February, so we had an insurance claim on that. And then, part of that as well, that's my
Part of the
office.
flood.
I know, that's my cave, no one ever goes and put that off, that carpet repair, or that's new carpet, which
It
was
was,
a huge upgrade.
is it carpet or tile in there, Stuart, before?
This carpet.
What number we on, 5? Or is that 5?
So this, I just wanted to show you guys, this is just an example, we talked about the parts of the field that we were gonna save. This is where we put the bear head, we got that in place Thursday, those boys, they're still gonna stake it down, make sure it stays in place and get out there and work the rubber back in. You see we've got these black spots and stuff. We looked at a couple different areas on campus that we could put it just for a display, the way of salvaging it. We liked here because there's nothing here. And so the other places that we had looked at that might have been a little more prominent and visible, we would have killed grass and we would have had to dig up and cap sprinkler lines. And so we thought we could put it here, and it would be right in the middle of all of our athletic facilities, and it wouldn't damage anything. We wouldn't have to do anything drastic. It would provide nice ground cover, and so that's where
Do you
that.
see where that's at?
That's on the northeast corner of the oxygen right there, south of the
This is the
baseball field.
oxygen right here in the baseball field. Okay, 6.
And we do have the end zones salvaged, and over at the one's at the softball field, one's at the baseball field. I'm working with the baseball and softball coaches, get them organized to get their teams, and they're gonna need help to get out there. It took about 40, we had to cut that bear head into 5 separate pieces, and it took about 30 kids and adults Thursday after practice to get it moved. These are just some pictures of what's going on at the field, which these are already pretty dated, but we got 180,000 pounds of sand that will go. And then, I don't know the exact poundage of the rubber, but all these sacks here, and these bigger sacks back here are sand and rubber. I did come by Sunday, I dropped my daughter off to go to the volleyball camp, so I got to come out here and give you guys some progress pics, and even though they're dated, because those dudes are working their tails off. So this is the field after it was done with the laser grading. They spent over a week laser grading, regrading, because that's the biggest part that's gotta be right, so we don't have any low spots, and make sure our drainage is correct. So that was the field after it was done with the laser grading, and you can, I don't know if you will see, but they've got the lining marked, painted and marked on there, where everything's gonna get laid out. And
I don't really see the painting, but
then, so this, I took this picture yesterday afternoon. I just wanted you guys to see the shock pad that's going in, how it lays in, like those like puzzle pieces underneath it, and then they're rolling those rolls of turf out on top of that. And the old field just sat on the aggregate. So just having the shock pad alone, I think, is going to be a huge improvement to that surface. Here's an example here. They've got the panels of the turf butted up. This is a seam, they haven't overlaid it and glued it yet. They're getting the rolls out, and then they're going back, and you can kind of see in the background here, you can see the seams that haven't been put down, but then further back there, you had seams glued down and lines in place. And here's a good picture of a finished seam going down. I know you can't, it's really hard to tell, but you can really see a difference in that turf product compared to what was out there. Just the density of the fibers, and again, this is just turf. They've still got to put sand. They still got to put rubber.
that whole process, Stuart, that you were explaining was different than what I expected. I thought they put that stuff underneath and then laid the turf on top of it. It's hard for me to imagine that they dump sand and rubber on top of the turf itself.
This is the north end zone, just a picture of what the new white end zones will look like. Of course, they've done none of the lettering work. So one thing I just want to tell you, don't get a false impression of how quickly this is going. They're going to get the turf out there, and they'll get it all pulled tight and glued down, and then they've got to go back and cut in all the lettering in the end zone. They've got to cut in the midfield logo, and then they've got to put and work in all that sand and put and work in all that rubber. So we're doing good on time, but there's still, if you get a very false impression, like, oh, they're going to be done by the end of this week, they may have all the turf in by the end of this week, but there's quite a bit of work left to be done after that. So And then the other thing, just another facility thing, met with the project manager and the electricians today on the bleacher project. We've got that all ironed out. Those bleachers will go in October 24th. We'll start that. That'll be a 3-week process from demolition and removal and putting in the new ones. But that's all squared away to go. We actually, I mean, they wanted to do it mid-September, but that would have been really, really disruptive to volleyball. So I thought it was better to just push all the way back, let volleyball have the gym as uninterrupted as possible. We'll have one home game that we'll have to play in the middle school after that, but every other thing will be trying to minimize the impact of volleyball and basketball as much as possible. So, anyways, that's kind of where we're at. It's been a busy summer, lots of facility work. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Are you guys considering putting the end zones under the batting cages?
Yes, that's the plan. So we took the south end zone all the way over to the softball field because it says Bears, because that space is smaller, so the actual Bears is smaller. And it's already cut into 5 sections. And then we took the estancia from the north side and brought it over to the baseball field because there's a lot more room there. We're gonna try to put it together where you can still read it, just like we did the Bearhead. We cut it in pieces and we put it back together like a puzzle piece. We're gonna do the same thing with the baseball and softball fields. It's gonna cover a lot more than just the batting cages. I think that baseball is gonna cover the majority of that left field line, and softball should cover the majority of all their ground area beyond their gravel, just west of our building out there and the batting cage. But I did tell